everyone, and welcome back to Todos Santos. This episode, we are moving back into the downtown, and we're going to start the process of fleshing it out a bit and adding some development, some infrastructure. As you can see here, we are starting with a bridge, which initially I kind of wanted the downtown area to be on just a peninsula and keep the access limited to the big interchange that we made quite a while ago. But at this point, that interchange was getting pretty swamped with traffic. And I just thought it would be an interesting project to connect it up over the channel here. And so eventually that waterway there is going to lead into the main port area that I'm definitely looking forward to building, although I have not necessarily planned that out yet. But anyway, because of that, we needed to have this very long, very tall bridge over the channel there. And so one of the main focuses of this video is going to basically be not the bridge itself, which is a pretty simple build, just having the road slope up there, and then we're going to plop in a very cool bridge asset later. But yeah, the main focus of the video is going to be connecting up this highway here to the main road that runs through downtown. So I basically built, you can see that roundabout there on the top left, and that basically connects this highway up to the street that runs through all of downtown. And it handles the traffic pretty well. It doesn't actually get, at least so far, it doesn't get too much traffic in terms of cars entering and leaving downtown via the bridge, but it gets enough to look pretty cool and to be functional. So we basically just end up building a kind of an interesting partial cloverleaf interchange. And it's just interesting because the surface roads here run at kind of weird angles, so there end up being some interesting opportunities to have the merging lanes, you know, running at the right angle and that sort of thing. You'll see it as I build it. It comes out to look kind of interesting. And that's really what I was going for, was just something to make this end of downtown stand out a little bit more. And also just to feel a little bit more developed. I mean, not that you need to have freeway interchanges running through your downtown to you know, have good development or whatever, but it definitely gives that look. And you know, I'm going primarily for aesthetics with the city overall, and of course just in this specific area. So at the risk of repeating myself, I'm just going to mention really quickly that at this point I obviously did not have the node controller mod that allows you to shape and slope and do various other things with nodes and segments, which is such a fantastic mod, and neither did I have the intersection marking tool. I promise I will stop talking about this, and it's basically going to be this episode and then 2 more, and then we're at the point where I installed those mods and I can start showing you what I've been able to do with them. And they just make the game so much more fun to play, in this style at least, you know, when you're going for at least a semblance of realism and just trying to make cities that look nice and, you know, somewhat realistic. Okay, so I put toll booths down there, and I want this to be a toll bridge because they'd want to, you know, be able to at least somewhat control the number of cars that enter downtown through this way. And I was inspired to do this because there is a bridge in San Juan, which you can see here. That's a toll bridge. Of course, it's in a completely different area. It crosses, I think it's a lake or a lagoon or something like that. It's a very long bridge, kind of cool. And yeah, you have to pay a toll to cross. So I just wanted to implement that idea here because I don't think we'll necessarily be doing any other really long bridges like this anywhere else in the city. Or if I do, it won't be anything to this scale. So yeah, I just wanted to have that somewhere in the city. And I think these vanilla toll booth buildings from the Industries DLC actually looks pretty good. So I just end up using that instead of custom making one. Although, of course, you know, we come in and add all these decals and props and stuff just to spice it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more detailed and interesting. And of course, it actually functions as a toll booth, which is, that's one nice thing about using vanilla assets, is they have the functions built in without having to have a mod for it. You know, of course, you could probably recreate this sort of thing with just roads and a bunch of props and some buildings, and then you could set it so cars have to stop there and that sort of thing. And that would, you know, do just as well, but it's kind of nice to just have it built in. I actually did a border crossing by hand like that in my first series, Northern Creek. If you haven't seen that, that was a really fun build. And that was definitely on my mind when I was making this. Although this is a little bit more, you know, it's in the middle of a city, so it's a little bit more built up, a little bit more urban. It's always a little bit challenging to do a build like this where you have roads running at kind of a weird angle like this. it's just hard to kind of make them into a cohesive surface, if that makes sense. Like in real life, I don't think it would be like they would pave, the 4-lane road there for the toll booth. They would pave it down as one thing, and they wouldn't pave another road that runs parallel to it for that little pull-off there that I did. It would just be all one surface that was paved down for whatever amount of space they needed. So it's kind of hard to do that. And we really just end up using surface painter and decals to try to blend it all together, and then cover up some of the seams with those barriers. Of course, there would actually be barriers there too, which is nice. So there's a reason to have that thing there. But, up to a point, you could kind of just keep piling on details in order to kind of give that look that it's one cohesive surface instead of a bunch of road assets placed down. Obviously, there's a point, though, where it's just like you have too much stuff there and it looks ridiculous. And I put those billboards there because there are billboards there on the bridge this is based on. Probably not the best look for, I don't know if it's the city or like a private company that runs that toll booth, but maybe not the best look to have ads for beer there. But, Todos Santos is kind of a weird place sometimes, especially when it comes to billboards. Because they have like billboards all over the place, but it's basically for like the same 2 or 3 companies. So I guess it almost feels like a little dystopian or something. So with all these details we start putting down with signs and lanes and stuff, I wanted it to be like almost like when you drive up to this type of place, it's just kind of intimidating because there are like all these signs and lights and cameras. There are all these different signs telling you what to do and where to go and everything. Of course, it's like a very simple system when you step back and just take a look at it, but just this sort of information overload as you approach. I wanted to try to evoke that a little bit. And then I have these really cool dynamic signs that, they're not dynamic within the game, but in real life, to be able to turn on and off. I've always wanted to use these, and I never really found the right place to use them. They're kind of a little big in this context, but I think they look kind of cool. And of course, because we have those lanes closed, I have to actually turn them off with the traffic manager, because otherwise it would seriously bug me. Because it would just be cars driving through the closed lanes, which is completely unacceptable in a video game. Not to be getting too negative here, but another thing that really bugs me is that when you have 2 different types of roads connecting, the node changes colors, which is just like so infuriating when you're trying to detail an intersection or a merging lane or something like that. And I experienced that there, transitioning between the toll road and just the normal freeway. There's just this big empty gap. And in this particular case, it's not very bad. It's actually a quite similar color, but it loses that texture there, if you see what I mean. And with certain other rows where you connect them, it's very noticeable and just kind of a pain because you either have to just ignore it or try to cover it up. And both of those really aren't perfect solutions. And that's just, that totally ruins it doesn't totally ruin, but it affects the aesthetic negatively. I'll say that. But in the long run, not really a big deal, I don't think. It just bugs me occasionally. Anyway, okay, now that I got that off my chest, I basically just copied and pasted the entire set of details there over to the other side. And now I'm hopping back over to downtown, gonna finish off building this very interestingly shaped interchange. So I'll shut up and let you watch that, and I'll be back in just a minute. So I put those guardrails down just so the cars didn't go flying off the ramp there. And then, of course, because we're in an urban area, I want to have a sound barrier. And basically, I'm just trying to, delineate between where the freeway ends and where the surface roads begin. So the freeway area and the interchange has a lot more signage and barriers and basically just guidance on where to go. And then the surface roads have less decoration, and really all that is in service of just trying to blend the roads together. As I've been jumping around, you might have seen that roundabout. It's top right of screen right now. I don't have footage of that. I'm not sure why I didn't record that. I don't really remember what my thought process was there. But basically, it's just made out of freeway networks plopped down to make the actual functional part of the roundabout, so that it's completely flat with no sidewalks peeking up like there are with normal surface roads. And then I just covered it up with some ploppable asphalt and plopped down some decals, among other things, to just make it look nice and beautiful. I initially remembered wanting to make it into a turbo roundabout, which is kind of just a slightly different design compared to a normal roundabout. It basically has it so instead of having a central lane where you could, in theory, just keep going around and around, which creates a lot of points of conflict. It's basically just a modified version that cuts down on those points of conflict and directs you more quickly to your exit from the roundabout. Anyway, I ended up not making that for some reason. Again, I guess I was just like going crazy when I made that. I don't know why I didn't record it. Don't know why I didn't make a turbo roundabout. It was probably just, it's kind of difficult to make any sort of intersection when you're building it like that, because you have to match the details to lanes that you can't really see, because all these freeway roads are jam-packed so tightly together that you can't see the lanes. Anyway, whatever my thought process was, it's there. You'll see it in the cinematics. It's kind of a nice little roundabout. And it actually handles all the incoming traffic pretty well, which is nice. Although, like I said, it's not like exactly overloaded with cars entering the city. I mean, you see a lot here. That's just because there are people moving in, because I put down some houses. And I found that one of the best ways to, I don't know if it's one of the best, I can't say that, but one of the easiest and most fun ways to make an interchange really look, maybe not realistic, but I don't know, to make it look like it fits, to blend it in, is to put down this amazing, lush, beautiful mountain grass prop. Not the one I'm putting down right now, although those are nice props as well, but the one I put down initially with the big tufts of grass. I just think it adds so much, especially if you have like a clover leaf like this where you have some slope, and it just kind of helps to hide the ugliness and repetition of just having the same grass texture all over the place. And it's kind of just a nice way to add some green space to your city. Obviously not usable green space, I've talked about that before, but it's still, if you're going to be driving, might as well have some trees around you and some grass. On the areas right next to the roadway there, I'm adding just some nice little details. Finally get a chance to use some of those very cool vegetation props that I don't really use elsewhere, because I am so often just using trees and stuff as filler and to cover up gaps and that sort of thing. So yeah, that mountain grass prop, fantastic for all your vegetation needs. And now we are moving on to adding a little bit of a residential neighborhood here. Like I mentioned last episode, we're going to be pretty much filling in most of the downtown area, like this whole downtown peninsula over the next 4 episodes, not including this one. So I wanted to start that and just do a little bit of a low density neighborhood, pretty much mirroring what we did last episode. Using mostly the same assets, and again, these are all subject to all the issues I talked about last time, but I just thought I'd include this build anyway, just to kind of show you what the context is for this interchange here. And don't worry, we're going to be shaking things up over the next few episodes and doing something a little different in terms of how we do residential and how we develop this area. Yeah, and you can see those buildings popped up there off screen. As I've been recording episodes, I've been doing some off-screen building and trying to fill in some areas kind of like that. So I've gone back, I've filled in quite a bit of the original island. That's where we built the old town and the castle. I've filled in neighborhoods bordering on the area we filled in last episode. And I can't show everything that I do, unfortunately, because we'd be on like episode 50 right now instead of episode 24. For every 30-minute episode I release, there's like 4 hours of footage. It's just crazy. So I tried to put the most interesting builds and the most detailed builds in the series And then other stuff is just going to be relegated to the cinematics. So I hope that's all right. And like I said, it'll be in the cinematics, and I think as the series goes on, we'll be able to watch the city grow. And all these areas I built off screen will just be in the service of making it look like a nice, vast city, which I'm really looking forward to showing you what I've been working on in terms of that, in terms of making it look like a real city, or at least somewhat like a real city, hopefully. And now we're heading back one more time to this toll booth here, or to this toll area here. And we're just going to be filling in these gaps in between the freeway and the neighborhood. I figured there would need to be some sort of administration or something like that for this company that's running the toll booth and the bridge. So that's their offices here. So I'll be quiet while I try to put down some details that will hopefully make it look like something that could, in theory, be a functional administration for a toll bridge, which I have absolutely no idea what that would be like. So I just kind of use my imagination. So again, I'll be quiet and see you in just a minute. So I didn't want to have just straight development all the way up to the freeway. I wanted to have something kind of a little more interesting here and a little different. So I decided to just have like this paved over plot of land that's basically used as a park. So we have a little basketball court here. And I keep running into this problem where I think I have an asset for like a painted basketball court, but I don't. And this happens in like 3 or 4 different episodes where I just assume that I have this asset and then I don't have it. And then for some reason I forget and come back later and still haven't installed one. I'm pretty sure I recently actually did. At least I have it written down on my list of recently acquired assets. But anyway, so I just basically forgo the lines and the actual markings for the court and just have these hoops there. So all the little Sims here can come here and play basketball. And they'll just have to imagine that the lines are there, which is fine. You know, it's good for them to think for themselves every once in a while. It's kind of a beat up little area, so I wanted to have those damage decals there just to kind of show that like at the edge of the paved area, it's just starting to crumble and out of disrepair. And then I put all those little grass tufts down on some of the cracks. It's probably a little bit excessive with that, but I think it gives kind of a nice look, at least when you're up close. It doesn't really matter from afar, but when you're up close, it kind of looks like there are weeds growing up through the cracks. And then I stumble across this tool that I use occasionally, but probably not enough. It's a really nice tool to kind of deal with the bland repetition of the landscape textures, which is just the resource brush tool. You can have a particular texture that comes through, like when you put down oil, for example. So I just use that there. Obviously, I don't care that there's oil there, but it does a really good job to make the textures a little bit more distinctive. It's also very nice for blending between different types. So if you want to go from like grass or dirt, you can put that down, or grass and sand, which we end up doing quite a bit in this series. But for some reason, I just always seem to forget that it's there. And so situations where it could be very useful, I just don't use it. I think it's just because there are so many tools and mods and assets in this game that there's no way I can possibly remember every single thing that I have at my disposal. Look at all those cars driving there. I love seeing that. I think it's just because they're all moving into that neighborhood I built. So anytime you build a big residential area like that, you're going to get all these people moving in at once, all these cars coming. And so like every time you do any sort of development, it's like, oh my God, the roads can't handle the traffic, but it's really just this influx of people that's doing that. And by the way, later on in this series, we get a ridiculous death wave in this city. I don't know what neighborhood it is I put down, but basically when you put down a bunch of houses at the same time, especially if the game's paused, all these citizens move in. And the game, I guess, thinks that they were all born at the same time because then they all die at the same time. So later on, you get a death wave and the population of your city just plummets. And that happens to us later. Right now we're at 37,000. We get up to about 90,000 at one point, and then we lose about 10,000 population in like a couple days, which is just ridiculous. It just keeps going down. Even though I'm adding housing, it goes down and down and down. But eventually, we'll keep pumping up the population because we have some projects coming up in the series that involve large amounts of residential zone, which is nice, including the next few episodes. We're going to be putting down quite a few houses. We're not going to get quite up to that 90,000 figure that I mentioned, but we'll definitely be on our way there. And, as we go, I just try to balance details like this pedestrian crossing you're seeing now, which I'm pretty happy with. I love the green color. I just think that looks really nice. But anyway, I try to balance this sort of thing with expansion, growing the population, making the city functional. Yeah, really trying to play the game like it wasn't originally intended, while still making it detailed and hopefully beautiful, hopefully somewhat, if not realistic, at least believable. I can't believe that whole tangent was just from a few cars driving down the road. This game. Okay, so with this crossing, I just figured there was a neighborhood here with a little park. I figured they'd probably want people to be able to cross over this lovely freeway that's in their backyard. So I did this, and very simple, classic technique. You line up the walkway, or you could do this with a road or something if you wanted to make a custom bridge. Line up the walkway, just the vanilla walkway, so that people can actually use it. This is assuming you want to make it functional, of course, and then upgrade it to the invisible version, which is not vanilla. That's a mod. Upgrade it to that, and Sims will use it, which is nice. Although because the walkway, like the functional part of the walkway, is wider than the actual prop itself, some of them do kind of, they're like walking on air outside of the bridge area, which is, like I said, Todos Santos is an interesting place sometimes. Okay, now I'm replacing this bridge asset here. I wanted something with a little bit more, not character, because the original asset did look very nice, but just a little bit more of a silhouette, I guess. Because this is basically going to be like the entrance, this channel here that it crosses over is going to be the entrance to the main port, like I mentioned before. So I wanted something a little industrial looking, that also, it serves a similar purpose visually, I think, to the tower that we made a few episodes ago. Because it just also pops up in like the background of every single cinematic, and I think it just gives a little bit of uniqueness and character to the skyline and the view of the city. And I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's a fantastic looking asset. It's very old as far as City Skylines assets go. I used this in my very first modded city back in the day, which was a lot of fun. But I think it holds up pretty well. It is meant to be a double-decker bridge. You can see those little nubbins there that are meant to hold up each deck, but I just wanted to use it as a single layer bridge. Didn't feel like going through the machinations of building a 2-layer bridge, which is like 4 times as much work. You think it'd be twice as much at minimum, but no, it's like 4 times as much work. And you can see those nubbins here getting in the way. Those do not look good. Anyway, enjoy the drive of the bridge. Enjoy the cinematics. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Todos Santos. Can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.